For months, there was nothing. No messages, no calls, no signs that he was thinking about you. Then, without warning, he appears again. Maybe it's a text, a phone call, or simply a notification showing he looked at your profile. Suddenly, emotions you believed were settled begin to rise all over again. Before you answer him, before you decide what this means, it's important to understand why a man returns after disappearing for months. There are only a few genuine reasons, and knowing them can help you respond with clarity instead of emotion. What you're experiencing right now isn't a sign that you've failed to heal or that you've been holding on too tightly. It's your mind and body recognizing an emotional connection that once mattered deeply. It was real, meaningful, and it was never fully resolved. Psychology tells us that when two people build a strong emotional bond, that connection doesn't simply disappear because communication ends. The brain doesn't erase someone overnight. Instead, those memories remain stored within your nervous system. They live quietly beneath the surface, showing up unexpectedly through thoughts, feelings, and moments you never planned for. Now that he has reached out again, everything you carefully placed in the background suddenly feels alive. Old emotions return. Questions begin to fill your mind. You wonder why he's back, what changed, and whether this moment means something more. None of that makes you weak. It's simply how genuine human attachment works. When someone who once played an important role in your emotional world returns, your brain naturally reacts. That's not failure. It's biology. But before you give him an answer, before you decide whether to let him back into your life or walk away for good, take a moment to understand what's really happening. Don't let fear write the story. Don't let hope invent one either. Instead, look at what psychology actually tells us. The first reason is one of the most eye-opening truths about relationships. When he disappeared, he likely carried a picture of the future in his mind. He believed life would become easier without the relationship. He expected the distance to bring relief. He assumed the silence would eventually make everything feel lighter, and that moving on would happen naturally. For a while, he may have convinced himself that this was true, but life has a way of challenging the stories we create to justify our decisions. The freedom he imagined, the peace he expected, or the belief that something better was waiting on the other side often failed to match reality. Instead of finding what he thought he wanted, he began comparing his expectations with his actual experience. Psychologists describe this as the contrast effect. What once seemed like the better path is measured against reality, and sometimes reality doesn't live up to the promise. The absence that once felt necessary begins to reveal the value of what was lost. In that comparison, people often realize too late that what they left behind meant far more than they understood at the time. When someone chooses to leave a relationship that truly mattered, something unexpected begins to happen beneath the surface. Without even realizing it, they start comparing every new experience to what they once had. Every conversation is quietly measured against the understanding you shared. Every new person is, consciously or not, compared to the comfort, warmth, and emotional connection they experienced with you. As time passes, those comparisons become impossible to ignore. New connections may seem promising at first, but if they never reach the same emotional depth, the mind slowly begins to recognize what was left behind. This isn't usually a sudden realization or a dramatic moment. It's a gradual awareness that grows stronger over time. He didn't come back simply because someone else disappointed him. He returned because the relationship you shared became the emotional benchmark. The connection you created established a standard that future experiences couldn't quite replace. The second reason reaches far beyond conscious thinking. It has everything to do with the way the human brain is designed to form lasting emotional bonds. This isn't just a romantic idea, it's supported by neuroscience. When two people build a genuine emotional connection, the brain releases powerful chemicals such as oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. These aren't only responsible for making us feel happy or close to someone, they actually strengthen the brain's neural pathways, reinforcing emotional attachment and creating patterns that associate one person with comfort, safety, and reward. In many ways, the nervous system begins to recognize that person as familiar, almost like a place that feels naturally safe to return to. What many people don't realize is that these neural patterns don't simply disappear because communication ends. Distance may quiet them, but it doesn't erase them. They remain stored beneath the surface, waiting for something to bring them back into awareness. Sometimes, all it takes is hearing a familiar song that suddenly reminds him of you. It might be walking through a place that carries your memory, noticing a certain kind of sunset, or experiencing an ordinary evening that somehow feels incomplete. Even dreams can awaken emotions he wasn't expecting to revisit. Time alone doesn't delete meaningful emotional programming. It only places it in the background for a while. Then, when something triggers those memories, the feelings often return with surprising strength. From his perspective, it may not even seem like a logical decision. Instead, it feels like an invisible pull he can't fully explain. What draws him back isn't always conscious choice. Often, it's his own nervous system responding to a connection it never truly stopped recognizing. Even during the months of silence, your presence continued to exist within his emotional world, and his mind likely returned to thoughts of you far more often than he ever expected. The third reason is one of the hardest truths in relationship psychology, and it's something many men struggle to admit, even to themselves. After all this time, he has finally realized what life actually feels like without you. There is a kind of understanding that only real separation can bring. It's not the absence of arguments or disagreements that changes someone. It's the absence of the person who once brought comfort, understanding, and emotional safety into their life. He begins to miss the little things that seemed ordinary at the time, the way you listened without making him feel judged, the way you understood parts of him he rarely showed anyone else. Around you, he didn't always have to pretend or hide behind confidence. He could simply be himself, with all his uncertainty, vulnerability, and honesty. Many men who return after months of silence go through what psychologists describe as emotional substitution failure. Over time, they discover that some connections simply cannot be replaced. Maybe he met new people who seemed exciting in the beginning, only to realize the emotional depth wasn't the same. Maybe he stayed busy, distracted himself, or convinced himself every day that he had already moved on. But eventually, reality caught up with him. He recognized that what you offered wasn't something anyone could easily recreate. It wasn't a generic relationship that could be exchanged for another. Your kindness, your presence, the way you understood him, and the unique connection you built together belonged only to you. Few emotional experiences are more painful than realizing the true value of something after it's already gone. That realization carries enormous emotional weight. When he came back, he wasn't simply acting on impulse. He returned carrying the difficult awareness of what his silence had cost him and what he willingly walked away from. The fourth reason isn't rooted in what happened between the two of you. It's rooted in everything that never happened. Some conversations were never completed. Some feelings were never expressed. Important words remained unspoken. Psychology shows that unresolved emotional experiences don't simply disappear with time. Instead, they stay active beneath the surface, growing heavier the longer they're ignored. Therapists often refer to this as unfinished emotional business, a lingering emotional burden created when a relationship ends without genuine closure. For him, that unfinished chapter may be filled with an apology he never gave, feelings he never had the courage to express, or truths he buried instead of speaking honestly. Perhaps there was a moment when he chose silence over vulnerability, distance over honesty, and has quietly lived with that decision ever since. When someone carries unresolved emotions for months, they rarely become smaller. More often, they grow stronger in the background until they're impossible to ignore. The urge to contact you again may not simply be about getting back together. It can also be his mind and nervous system searching for the resolution that never came. Whether that resolution is possible is another question entirely, but the emotional responsibility for that unfinished story belongs to him. He is the one who must face the weight of what was left unsaid and undone. What happens from this point forward is completely your decision. Whether you choose to have the conversation he never had, give him another chance, or continue protecting the peace you've already built, that choice belongs to you alone. The fifth reason deserves the most honest and thoughtful consideration. Sometimes a man comes back because he has truly changed. Not every return is manipulation, and not every period of silence means he never cared. Some men withdraw because they feel more than they know how to handle. Deep emotions expose fears they aren't prepared to face. Instead of leaning into vulnerability, they step away, they disappear. Because staying emotionally present requires a level of maturity they haven't yet developed. But sometimes, and only sometimes, that time apart becomes the very thing that transforms them. Distance can force someone to face themselves in ways a relationship never could. Without the comfort of your presence, they are left alone with the consequences of their choices. They begin asking difficult questions, confronting uncomfortable truths, and seeing themselves more honestly than before. Psychology suggests that lasting personal growth rarely happens when life feels easy. Real change is usually born during moments of discomfort, loss, loneliness, and accountability. Those experiences often become the turning point that reshapes someone's character. If his return feels different this time, if you notice more humility, greater responsibility, genuine consistency, or a calmer emotional presence, it's worth paying attention to. Not because you owe him another opportunity, but because you deserve to make your decision with clear eyes instead of old fears or familiar habits. Whatever you choose, remember one truth above everything else. His return is not evidence that you suddenly became valuable. It simply reveals that he eventually recognized the value that was already there. Those are two completely different things. You didn't become more worthy the moment his message appeared on your screen. Your value existed long before he reached out, and it remained unchanged throughout every day of his silence. His absence never defined your importance. It reflected where he was emotionally, his fears, his limitations, and his readiness, not your worth. Never convince yourself that you loved too deeply, cared too much, expressed too many emotions, or gave more than you should have. Those qualities were never your weakness. They were expressions of your capacity to love sincerely. Loving wholeheartedly was never the mistake. It was one of the greatest gifts you could offer another person. And gifts like that are uncommon. Many people don't understand their value until they've lived without them. Only after trying to replace what they lost do they realize some connections simply cannot be duplicated. That realization often arrives far too late. But you deserve more than being someone's second realization. You deserve to be chosen from the beginning, with certainty, consistency, and intention. You deserve someone who sees your value without needing months of silence to discover it. You deserve a relationship that protects your peace instead of asking you to sacrifice it. Whatever door you decide to open or leave closed, make that choice from a place of self-respect. Let it come from the quiet confidence of knowing that you are worthy of being loved, appreciated, and chosen every single day, without uncertainty, without disappearing acts, and without long stretches of silence. If these words reflected something you've lived through or helped you see your own story more clearly, I'd love for you to join this community. Leave a like, subscribe to the Psychology Wisdom family, and stay connected for future insights that may reach you exactly when you need them most. Above all, remember this: you are not facing this journey by yourself, and you never have been.